This podcast is intended to provide information for educational purposes only and to serve as a starting point for you to have a conversation with your personal physician. Nothing stated on this podcast should be considered medical advice. Consult with your physician before undertaking or changing any treatment plan.
Because it's a huge problem if you've lost 60 or 70 pounds on these meds and then you stop taking them and become pregnant.
Yes.
You can gain 40 pounds in that first trimester. All right, this is episode 27 of the Pound to Cure Weight Loss Podcast, Ozempic, baby. So Zoe's still on her honeymoon, so we've got Deidre here again.
Hey.
And so Deidre, our patient guest today is one of our coworkers in the OR.
Oh, yes. Perfect. I love serving our TMC friends.
So Deidre runs essentially a GLP-1 clinic in the OR. She runs it between cases. When we do cases, there's usually like about 45 minutes or so in between the from one procedure to the next while they clean the room. And so Deidre usually makes rounds in the OR talking to everybody. Our hospital covers the GLP-1 medication. They cover both Zepbound and
They actually have
Wegovy.
really good coverage for
Yeah,
GLP-1
if you're a
medications.
TMC employee, Deidre knows the policy inside and
I know
out.
all of your insurance plans. I know what covers
Right,
what,
yeah.
how to use the coupons.
What's the best plan? Which one?
The teal is really good. The purple's pretty good. So yellow used to be good.
So anyway, so Deidre runs the OR clinic, and I
Yeah.
think that's something that a lot of us take pride in is that we take care of each other.
I mean,
in
our staff
healthcare.
helps us, so we
Right.
want to help them.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I do it.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of people looking really good lately in the OR, right? Definitely some people have lost some weight, and I think a lot of that's thanks to Deidre. So if you're out there and you're a regular listener to our podcast, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. That helps get the podcast out to other people, and so that we can share this message of inclusiveness and of a shame and blame-free treatment of obesity, and making sure that everybody gets the important information that they need to make the best choice.
Be successful in their weight loss
And
journey.
to be successful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's move into our In the News segment. And this is where our title comes from. This is from CNN, and it's called Ozempic Babies. Reports of surprise pregnancies raise new questions about weight loss drugs. So this story is actually about a patient who was taking Mounjaro, not Ozempic. But what we're finding is that Ozempic has essentially become the Kleenex of facial tissue. So the technical name for Kleenex is a facial tissue, but everybody just calls it Kleenex,
Right, the
which is
brand name
actually the
just
brand.
stuck.
Yeah,
All
the brand
GLP-1s
name's
now
stuck.
are Ozempic.
And so, yes, exactly. All GLP-1s are Ozempic. And so this article really shows that because they're talking about Mounjaro, but they call it Ozempic baby, right? But it was really a Mounjaro baby. It's actually a package insert, isn't it, Deidre?
Yeah.
Mounjaro, right? Increased risk of fertility.
Right. And and also it's never been studied for tetrogen or for increasing.
Teratogens, yeah.
Yes, thank you, for increasing birth defects. And so you also can't take it with pregnancy or before becoming pregnant.
Yes, so that's really something that's very important, and,
Right.
and we're going to talk quite a bit about that in today's episode, is that GLP-1 medications, no GLP-1 medications, are approved for pregnancy. So it is on the Mounjaro package insert that there is an increased risk of fertility. We talk to all of our patients of childbearing
Absolutely.
age about not relying on oral contraception, on using barrier contraception or IUD or something along those lines. And so this article talks a lot about PCOS. Deidre, why don't you talk to us about what PCOS is and how it's related to obesity?
So PCOS kind of has two main factors. One is insulin resistance, right? And the other is overproducing androgens.
Right.
So your body overproduces androgens like testosterone and progesterone to some extent, and that causes you to have a decreased sensitivity to insulin. Because of that, your pancreas produces more insulin to compensate for the decreased sensitivity and the insulin resistance. And insulin is a weight-gaining hormone, and so you start to gain weight.
Yeah.
So it becomes kind of this vicious cycle.
And it's a cycle because the fat cells are what are producing most of the androgens, right?
Right. But the fat cells produce androgens and estrogen.
And estrogens,
So as you
right.
gain weight, your body actually produces both more androgens and estrogen, which disrupts your menstrual cycle and ovulation, and so decreases fertility. And so many times with weight loss, you improve the insulin resistance. And so that decreases the amount of androgens you're producing, right? That is in the cycle with the amount of androgens you're producing. You produce less estrogen and the hormones are more balanced and you can start having periods again. You can start ovulating again and it's easier to get pregnant because of that.
So we've known about this for many, many years. I've had, probably a dozen or so patients become pregnant within the first 6 months after bariatric surgery.
More than that. I've seen 3 or 4 like in the last month. I'm not even,
Really?
yes.
All right. We tell everybody it's 18 months
Right.
before pregnancy is acceptable after bariatric surgery. And I've seen this a number of times, and I've actually seen only healthy babies as a result of this. So we're seeing the exact same thing with Ozempic and all the other GLP-1s, that there's an increased risk, there's an increast chance of fertility with these medications.
Because of the weight loss. I mean, it's the same concept.
Right.
You're producing less estrogen, and so that helps with the hormonal balance, which allows your periods to become more regular. And a lot of times patients after bariatric surgery and after losing weight on these medications will have heavier, longer periods for 3 to 4 months until their menstrual cycles kind of and their hormonal balance starts to level out as the weight loss starts to slow down.
Yeah.
It becomes more gradual.
So it's recommended that you stop these medications 2 months prior to trying to conceive. That's our recommendations. That's the official package recommendations. When it comes to pregnancy, honestly, we just don't mess around. The rules are the rules. We don't bend the rules. There's no, a wink and a nod. It'd be better if you did. But
it hasn't been studied, so it's better to just kind of err on the safe side.
Yeah, this is not something you want to mess with because you're not even messing with your own life. You're messing with your child's life.
Right.
So another thing that's tricky with this is that a lot of the symptoms of pregnancy and PCOS overlap. Right?
Yep.
Bloating,
nausea,
amenorrhea, not having periods.
Right. Yeah.
And so sometimes patients are pregnant, don't know it. They think it's just a regular PCOS.
Right.
And so they're continuing to take the medication. But there's one thing that we're seeing without question, which is that Ozempic and other GLP-1 medications is a very powerful fertility medicine.
Right. And yes, absolutely.
That's really interesting to me also from a coverage perspective because a lot of insurance policies have fertility coverage and they'll pay a certain amount of money or pay toward things that will provide coverage for fertility. And so the question is, will Ozempic be covered as one of these medications?
Right. I mean, that would be fantastic because it's not just the weight loss, which insurance companies might balk at, but improving the insulin resistance is huge.
Yeah.
And these medications were made for diabetes. Their job is to lower your blood sugars. That's what they were designed for.
Yeah.
And so just by taking these medications by default, you're going to have less insulin resistance, better control your blood sugars, and that helps fertility.
Yeah.
So
I think this is something that we're going to talk more about the safety of pregnancy because that is, in my mind, that's really the complicated issue.
Right.
Is, if you're of childbearing age and you're starting a GLP-1 medication, what's the right thing to do there? And we'll talk more about that later in the show. But this is a really interesting story because we just keep seeing this. A couple episodes ago, we talked about sleep apnea. Right, we're seeing it with non-alcoholic fatty liver, cardiovascular risk reduction, cancer risk reduction. We're starting to see all these really great benefits from these medications. And this also, to me, really just solidifies the fact that these medications are here to stay. That we're not going to find out about some freak side effect 3 years down the road where everybody who's been taking these medications is going to die an awful death or have some terrible thing. We see this with all of these medications. I think we've talked in the past, Bactrim, right? Stevens-Johnson syndrome. For those of you who don't know what Stevens-Johnson syndrome is, it's when your skin falls off. It's a terrible, terrible problem. And yet we know this, we see this with Bactrim, but yet we still prescribe Bactrim.
Aspirin.
And aspirin
is
too.
what causes
You're right.
it. And aspirin's been around forever.
We see it too.
Right.
And so we understand that there's these really, these terrible side effects.
The benefit is just much greater than the risk.
Exactly.
And the reduction of comorbidities on so many levels is what's going to make these medications last for the long term, and hopefully what will get coverage too.
Remain a mainstay of treatment of metabolic disease. Yeah, just as we keep adding more and more and more of these comorbidity benefits, it would outweigh any any issues that would pop up down the road with these random and rare side effects.
Right.
So, all right, well, let's bring Lacey on. Lacey is part of our OR clinic that Deidre has been managing.
She's been super
her weight
successful.
loss. She's been super successful. So let's bring her in and hear her story. All right. Well, let's welcome Lacey to our podcast.
Hello.
Lacey works with us in the OR. And she's also part of Deidre's OR clinic that she runs in between cases.
Yes.
So Lacey, why don't you just tell us your story of your struggle with obesity and when you kind of started your treatments and how this has all worked for you.
I think it really started after I had my child at a young age in college. And then I had, I was a surgical tech in the OR and from 2008 on. And then in 2012, I decided to have a gastric sleeve.
Okay.
Right.
So, and then that I lost in the first year, 100 pounds.
What'd you start out and what'd you finish at?
I started out at 250 pounds
Okay.
pre-surgical weight. And
Okay.
then I got down to 150.
Right. You're like, I did it.
Yeah, and then
I won.
rebounded
Yeah.
a little bit. So I got I maintained 170
Yeah.
to 180.
And you had that done in the U.S.?
Yes.
Yeah.
Texas.
Yeah. In Texas. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
And you're a tech and you work in the OR regularly, so
Yes.
you understand you got to go to the right place.
Yes. Yes. I watched many procedures done before I decided
You got to pick your surgeon based
I got to
on
pick
how
my
he or she did. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I watched and I studied it a lot before I made that decision.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you lost almost 100 pounds, rebounded some. Now, how was your nutrition after that sleeve? Did you get a lot of counseling and guidance on that?
Yeah, but mostly like an OR clinic, like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have now,
Yeah.
because that's kind of the perk of the job, right? We just
Right.
get to
Come in and ask questions whenever you guys want.
yeah. So yeah, I did that, and I was in the OR, and so I try to do meal prepping as much as possible, but as you know,
Yeah.
we
It
eat
gets
when
in
we
the way.
can.
Especially in a
Right.
hospital setting, it's so hard to avoid
Yeah.
like those bad foods and
Uh-huh.
Yeah. When you're first assist, you can't exactly take a break.
right.
No.
Right.
You eat whatever you're
it's
allowed.
not like someone else can just pop in and take over
Yeah.
for you. The other, like the circulating nurses and the techs who hand the instruments, they're able to get a
They
break,
get relieved.
but
yeah.
the first assist can't.
No, yeah, we're kind of tied down the way you both
Right.
are. We
Yeah.
never-
Yeah. We don't get a
no.
break either.
No.
Yep.
No.
So
we just kinda
so
eat
so
when we
that
can.
kind of leaves you often short of time, and sometimes you're going from one room to another. You're going to
Right.
help
You're
this
gonna grab
surgeon
what's
in room
quick.
5, and then
What's convenient
Yeah.
and
Yes.
fast.
and so you're grabbing
Yes.
a bag of something.
Also, you're
Yes.
starving because you've been
Yeah.
in a long case.
And- yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so your job kind of lent itself to not as great of
Not as great.
eating, and that slipped. And there's another issue, which is that everybody in the OR there's a lot of people who kind of have their thing that they do, and your husband is pretty much known as the barbecue king. He
Yes.
also works in the OR with
Yes.
us, and so there's a lot of barbecue, unhealthy food.
Lots of it.
So that probably contributed a little bit to
Oh, for
some of the
sure.
weight gain,
For
right?
sure.
So then you kind of, you moved here to Tucson, you started working with us, and you joined our OR clinic.
Yes. Yes. I moved here in 2018, so I noticed around 2020, it was about 8 years post-op that my weight was getting back up again.
So you held it off for about 7 or 8 years.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is very impressive after a
that's
sleep.
pretty good
Yeah,
after
that's
a sleep.
really good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I still remember coming and talking to you and being like, how long does a sleeve last? Is it forever? And you said about 7 to 8 years. And I said, yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt it coming on again. So it was very like,
So what did that feel like? How did, I think two things. First, from just a basic hunger and how'd your body feel? But then also, how about the emotional side of that?
I was very distraught, just
Yeah.
like very discouraged because I went through this procedure and I was doing so well for so long. But I
Right.
think moving a new job, whole new state, whole new people, all the stressors came in, and I just did not handle it well and just started emotional eating.
Right.
So I think it was definitely all in one,
Yeah.
all tied
All
together.
probably around the time the
Yeah.
physiology was starting to wear off too.
Exactly.
And
And
kind
I
of
felt like it
perfect storm.
happened overnight. Like it just came back overnight.
So
I
how
didn't
much-
get quite as big. I think whenever I started talking to you guys, I got up to 220.
Up to 220. Yeah. So that's
It's pretty close.
You gained back quite a bit of weight.
Yeah.
And at
You-
that
all but
point,
30
7 or
pounds.
8 years out, it's just as difficult to lose weight as it was prior to having this.
Yes, I agree.
Right.
So
So you tried some nutritional modification and it wasn't going anywhere.
Yes, and I worked out like for a year straight.
Yeah,
like,
you were really dedicated
I
to
was
working
doing
out, like,
really
and not
good.
like fake working out, like CrossFit. What do they call that?
At 40,
F30.
I was in F45 for
F45,
a solid year and almost a year and a half, and
Yeah.
I was.
And that's a brutal workout.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was doing good, but I just wasn't.
Scale
seeing
wasn't moving.
the
No, it wasn't moving.
seeing the weight
Yeah.
loss, right?
It wasn't moving.
And I think that's something that people don't understand, which is that, they think, whenever someone chooses surgery, whenever someone chooses medications, it's because they're too lazy to do it on their
Yes.
Right.
own. That's not what it is.
No.
It's that they've done all the things that they should be doing and it doesn't work.
Right.
No.
And so that's what you were experiencing. Your nutrition was dialed in.
Yeah.
Your exercise was dialed in.
Yes.
You'd regain the weight.
It was definitely very roller coaster at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would get like peaks of like, oh, I'm doing it, and then
Right.
it come right back,
Yeah.
and I'm just
And you
like,
probably see a little bit of weight loss and the weight regain, the
Yeah.
weight loss and the weight regain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just kind of little
Bouncing back and
fluctuations
forth.
around, but
Yes.
no substantial movement.
none.
So you're lucky enough to work at TMC. And so TMC is one of the few places in town that covers these medications reliably.
Yes.
So when did you start and what medication did you start?
I started in 2022. 22.
Okay.
So I've been on
So
medication for 2 years.
Okay.
And the first one I started on was the daily.
Saxenda.
Saxenda.
Right.
Yeah. That one was good for a little while, yes. But I didn't
How
like
much did
the
you lose
daily
on it?
one. I believe accurately it was about 30 pounds.
Okay.
That's
pretty
actually that's good for
Yeah.
Saxenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About 15%
Yeah.
total
You're a
body
really
weight
good
loss,
responder. Good weight
Yeah.
loss with the sleeve, good weight loss with the
Yeah.
meds.
But I think and I think it was just like it really, and I think it helped having this sleeve prior to before because I
Yeah.
felt like the getting fuller faster. Like
You did- there is a
understanding
better
my-
response.
Understanding
Yep.
the brain, like
Yeah.
because that was a hard thing to learn when I first got the sleeve was knowing when to quit.
Right.
But being on these afterwards, I learned I remembered.
Yeah.
You knew how to listen to your body.
I think there's
too
two
much.
components to it. It's the behavioral memory from just learning, hey, listen, I had a sleeve. You had to learn to slow down, to be more
Right.
mindful. I think there's a physiologic memory too,
Okay.
where it kind of almost brings out some of those changes that the sleeve did, and there's just some synergy. And we just keep seeing this over and over
Right.
again, don't we,
People
Deidre?
have better responses on these medications after bariatric surgery than prior to bariatric
Than
surgery.
people who haven't had bariatric
Right.
surgery.
Just
yeah.
like that, your body
Yeah.
remembers as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's just
Yeah.
something about that set point that even though your set point started to go up when you started to regain the weight, your body still remembered that it used to be lower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's the medications kind of brings out that memory.
It really, yeah. I did
And
notice
I
that.
can't explain it any better than that, but I think as we start digging through and we're putting that together in our own database. But that's what we're seeing over and over again is better response in
Yeah.
patients who've had surgery.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, unfortunately, you started Saxenda. I mean, you came to me, which you're the first person to come to me. That's awesome.
you started
Loved
with
it.
the
I
OG.
loved it.
You founded
You're
the
like, yeah.
clinic.
I was all, excuse me.
Yeah. Which is great.
Need help.
You guys do like so much for us. I love
Yeah.
to help everybody there.
Yeah.
So you started during the first big shortage of GLP-1 medications,
Yes.
which was the first Wegovy shortage when it was on, before Zepbound came out, when it was on back order for an entire year from January to December of 2022. And the only thing that was available was Saxenda.
Yep.
And so even though it's not the best for weight loss, everybody had to start on Saxenda during that time. It's all you could get.
Yeah.
So then you moved from Saxenda to
Wegovy.
Wegovy.
Yes, and that was.
And how'd you manage the shortages?
I hadn't really noticed it too badly like everyone else did. I guess I stayed ahead of it and I
Yeah.
planned
Yeah.
accordingly. But like just ordering. But I didn't really notice it. I've just now recently started noticing the shortage like this now.
So you're still on Wegovy.
I switched to Zepbound for
Okay.
the last 3 months, I believe.
about that.
About 3 months.
Okay.
I switched to Zepbound and now I can't find it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Anything.
what dose of Wegovy were you on?
The max.
The 2.4.
2.4. And what dose of Zepbound?
not the max, the 10 point.
You're
10.
at 10.
10.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I consider that like the comparable dose. There's never an exact correlation.
No.
But I usually say
No.
2.4 and 10 is
Yeah,
pretty
so,
good
so
match.
Deidre, when you have someone on Wegovy and you switch them over to Zepbound, you don't start at the bottom on Zepbound.
No, because they're not going to get an
Yeah.
effect. They're not going to gain an effect
Yeah.
because of the tolerance they've built up from being on previous GLP-1s.
Yeah.
But making that change,
Go ahead.
making that change from Wegovy to Zepbound, I thought it was very translative. I didn't notice.
It was very similar.
I did
Yeah.
not notice any
Yeah.
big change, and
Yeah.
it did have a lot of big side effects.
Part of it's because, do you mind talking about what you weigh now?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. I weighed this morning 153.
So you're back at your post-sleeve weight,
Yeah.
your lowest post-sleeve weight.
Yes.
And so I think part of it's that you're kind of as low as you're going to go.
I
Right.
don't think I want to be any.
Right.
less.
And
I'm
so
very happy.
as your weight gets closer to that kind of minimum that you're going to hit, the medications don't work. Like if you gave these medications to a relatively thin person, they're not going to lose 40 pounds.
Yeah, and that's
Right.
because it's not safe. Their body knows it's not safe to lose that kind of
Our
weight.
body has some
At
understanding.
lower
of that.
weights, both with surgery
Yeah.
and with medication, people lose more gradually. They lose less weight because it's not safe to lose huge amounts of weight at that point.
Yeah. That's what I like the
Yeah.
most. I've been on it for 2 years, on a version of it for
Yeah.
2 years,
Yeah.
and it's been a very slow and steady, gradual thing.
So,
which I
so
think
why'd
is
you
safe.
switch from Wegovy to Zepbound?
Shortage.
Shortage. Yeah. So Wegovy 2.4 is what's available now.
Okay.
Right.
So
Zepbound
maybe
is
time.
not.
And Zepbound is not.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think
Zepbound
I
is
might have
available
texted
at
somebody this
2.5, but it may be time to switch back to Wegovy. So you're planning on staying on Wegovy for the rest of your life?
I think so.
Yeah.
I know that was a suggestion that we had talked about before. I would like to be curious and taper off maybe one day
Mm-hmm.
and see what if my body can handle it. But I'm also don't want to get back to where I was either.
Right.
Like back at my heaviest. I want to
Yeah.
take advantage of science and help me.
Yeah.
This is definitely the point where we start talking about maintenance dosing,
Mm-hmm.
spacing the dosing out every other week, every third week, and that depends on your response to the medication. Some people are really hungry right at the end of the week and they need to take it every week. Some people can space it out and not experience too much extra hunger or cravings, or lowering the dose so that you can take it weekly but become more of a maintenance dose. So there are lots of options.
Actually,
That way you're not losing as much,
Right.
but you're also not taking the max dose
Yeah.
forever.
You're
Yeah.
splitting the difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're leaning more towards some maintenance dosing of
Yes.
this, and
And because I haven't been able, because of the Zepbound shortage and Wegovy, because
Yeah.
I haven't been able to get it. I think we had our consultation, our video thing about 3 weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
and I haven't
Been able to get it
been
since
able to
then.
get it since then. So, but I've
Yeah.
actually been doing okay.
Yeah.
You've
I've
been
been,
doing
okay. So I think now would
Which
be
is
the time
good. I
where-
mean, that shows that you can go a few weeks without taking it, so that would be a good maintenance approach for you.
Yeah.
right, and nothing crazy has happened.
And I'll tell you, I see this ability to tolerate these prolonged time periods without the medication more in bariatric surgery patients than I do in non-bariatric surgery
Yeah.
patients.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Must be that
I haven't
physiological
seen
thing.
that as much in our patients who've lost, 100 plus pounds with the medication alone without a history of surgery. I feel like when I see them, they're gaining weight earlier.
They
Right.
need it.
You're
they
seeing the
need
same thing,
medication.
Deidre?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely see in the bariatric patients more ability for more sustainability.
Yeah.
More ability to maintenance and
Must be that
So-
physiological memory.
So what's it like being on Wegovy and being married to the barbecue king? How does that all work? Like, how are you handling that? How are you managing that? What are you doing with your diet now that you're on the meds?
That's tough. So
Yeah.
that's really tough because especially summertime's coming around.
Right.
We
And you guys are
start
very
cooking
social and
very
you're always
social.
having parties. And,
Always
hey,
cooking.
there's
Yeah.
lots of good things you can eat that are barbecue foods,
Very.
barbecue traditions that are good for you.
Yes.
Beans.
yeah.
Yes.
Even though they're a little high in sugar sometimes.
Yes.
There's lots of lean meat choices. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to sauce it up. Greens.
Have you tried my husband's barbecue sauce? I'm just kidding. No, yeah, like
I mean, I love barbecue sauce.
a
Lacey.
lot of
It turns out on salads. Sometimes.
Yeah.
What is going on?
even on baked potatoes.
Yep. I'm from Missouri. We eat a lot of sauce.
But yeah, I know. I mean, it's all about portion control. That's the thing for me.
Absolutely.
Like so he'll smoke chicken for me, or he'll smoke salmon for me. And a lot of the smoked meats, it's like it doesn't really need much because
Right.
it doesn't require a lot of seasoning. So
Right.
it's very low sodium
Yeah.
and stuff like that because the flavor's all in the smoke. So I feel like I've been doing okay. Turkey breasts he does for me a lot.
Smoked turkey
And
breast.
I
Yes.
just don't.
Do you try to add a lot of vegetables to that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I try. But I usually get full on the protein because it's so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I should do that more for sure.
That's been kind of our nutritional strategy is based on a relatively small amount of animal protein and a lot of vegetables.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's different for you too, because, in the rapid weight loss phase, you were doing everything right. You were eating a lot of protein. You were focusing on protein. Just like after surgery, we put you on protein. Mm-hmm. When you're losing weight on GLP-1 meds, you should be eating a lot of protein, and that should be your focus. Okay. But now that you're in your at your weight you want, and actually, especially weaning off the meds and a desire to kind of come off the meds to some degree, we have to change the nutritional strategy because you're not at risk for starvation. We're not worried about muscle loss because your weight is not changing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you're not losing anything.
Okay.
And so that's where it comes time to kind of scale back on the animal protein and scale up on the vegetables.
Okay.
And making that tradition from kind of protein to produce.
Plant-based proteins as well.
Yeah.
Increasing plant-based proteins. So you're still getting proteins, you're still getting, complete proteins of 12 amino acids, or 20 amino acids, but from plant sources. A variety of plant sources and less from animal sources. Okay.
But I think that's something that really hasn't gotten out there. Mm-hmm. It barely is getting out there in bariatric surgery. We've kind of, our nutritional plan, which is more plant-based than probably 98% of all bariatric surgery diets, is finally kind of starting to catch some wind where people are saying, oh, I get it. I'm trying to maintain or lose weight. So maybe I should be eating more plants and less meat. And I think we need to see that same thing in the GLP-1 meds. Okay. And what you eat when you're in the weight loss phase and what you eat in the weight loss stable when you're stable, very different.
Right.
Very different. And so now you're there. And so we need to give you the strategies to make sure that that you're able to stay there. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah,
Lacey.
thank you, Lacey.
Right.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So good to hear from Lacey. It's just such a pleasure to work with.
Such a great job.
Yeah.
It's been great.
She's my second favorite assistant in the OR.
She's very good.
Yeah. Deidre's first. But Lacey is really
I'm okay
good.
with her stepping for me.
Yeah. But Lacey's really a great assistant.
Yeah.
So, Deidre, what do you have for us as for a nutrition segment?
So today I wanted to talk about eating out after bariatric surgery.
Okay.
So I see this a lot because especially since summertime is coming up, people are going on vacation. And that means eating convenience foods, eating at restaurants. They have family coming in town. They're going on trips. And that can be people find that very daunting to navigate. Everybody kind of has this idea of if I'm at a restaurant, I should be able to order what I want to eat, right? And if I'm on vacation, I should get to eat all the great foods that I want to eat while I'm in this new place. But after bariatric surgery, not only will you not feel good if you eat those foods, and same thing with GLP-1 medications, they work on the same pathway as bariatric surgery. You will not feel good if you eat things high in carbs, fats, and sugar. But you could cause weight gain, right? Weight gain with that.
Sure.
And so what I tell patients is when you go out to eat, even at a fast food restaurant, you have to approach that meal just like you would approach a meal at home, right? You want to focus on lean proteins, fruits and vegetables, right? Produce every meal, minimizing added fats. So, for instance, if you go to a restaurant, there's going to be an option that's either a fish dish without cream sauce, grilled, preferably or blackened, right? Not fried, not battered and fried, not fried catfish or fish fry. Or there's going to be like a lean protein like chicken or something like that, or even a lean beef is okay, like a lean steak. And then as your side choice, you're going to want to pick a vegetable. And even a salad, although salads can have a lot of hidden things in them. When you pick salad, you have to really be careful to, dressing on the side, preferably a light dressing if they have it, or oil and vinegar is even better. And then also the added toppings, like you want, no cheese, no bacon bits. Like you have to be careful with stuff like that, right? Those can add a lot of hidden calories. The same thing when you go to a fast food restaurant. Almost all fast food restaurant menus have at least a salad or a chicken sandwich. You can say, no bread or no mayonnaise, or for salads, you look for like a house salad type salad. Don't get something that's like a Caesar salad that's laden in high fat dressing and cheese. You want to look for kind of the most whole food choice. And then even a place like Taco Bell, which is one of my favorite fast food restaurants, you can get the Fresca menu, get chicken, Fresca tacos, and eat the chicken and tomatoes and pico out of the inside. I mean, they also have like 2 different types, like a black bean and a pinto bean bowl with cheese on top. They also have some whole food protein bowls. So there's a lot of options out there. So the first thing you can do to help prepare is to look at menus ahead of time. You know what fast food restaurants are around you. You know what you like to go to for lunch and what your office likes to go to. Look at those menus, look at the calories, look at the ingredients, and use the same rules, whole foods, lean proteins, lots of produce, every meal that you would use at home.
Zoe talks a lot about the planned indulgences.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we all support is that, you don't have to be perfect 100% of the time.
Right.
But if you eat out regularly, then you have to eat well when you eat out.
Right.
If you eat out once a month, then you can use that as one of your planned indulgences.
Right.
So the frequency really matters there. All right. So why don't we move into our questions from social media? Joel, why don't you start us off with our first question?
All right, so the first question is from Jennifer. I was a patient of Dr. Weiner's in Michigan. I have a question. I am 9 years post-op from a sleeve. My sugar levels have recently gone up, so my doctor put me on Trulicity. I've heard of some patients damaging their vagus nerve and their stomach stops working. How possible is this scenario, and should I worry about it being a bariatric patient?
So first of all, Deidre, what do you think about Trulicity? You prescribe more of these meds than I do.
Trulicity is kind of on the low end of weight loss when
Yeah.
it comes to GLP-1 medications. Yes, it will help control your blood sugar. Also on the low end for that as well.
Yeah.
Victoza and Trulicity are about 6 to 10% weight loss. The only thing that makes Trulicity slightly preferable to Victoza is that it's a weekly injection instead of a daily, and there's one more dose range than with Victoza. But really, they're older medications. They're not very effective. Ozempic and Mounjaro are much more effective for glycemic control, and conversely, Wegovy and Zepbound for weight loss.
Right.
So.
Trulicity, not great weight loss.
Unfortunately, for a lot of patients, that's the only coverage they have, and
Right.
so it's better than nothing.
It's probably the cheapest GLP-1. That would be my guess. That and Victoza, the cheap ones.
Absolutely.
So first of all, the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is, you know what vagus means in Latin? Wanderer. And that's because the nerve, it starts up in your neck and it goes down the esophagus. We see it all the time when we do hiatal hernia repairs. And once it goes there, it goes onto the stomach and it goes just all over the place. And it really spreads over almost your entire body. So the first is GLP-1s actually, if anything, preserve nerves because nerve damage is neuropathy, and we see that as a consequence of diabetes.
Right.
So when we bring people's sugar under control, we see improvement of neuropathy.
Yeah, that's why people experience gastroparesis with diabetes.
Right. And so the truth is, if you have diabetes and you have gastroparesis, like Deidre just mentioned, and you get on these medications and your sugar improves, you're actually going to get improvement in vagus nerve functioning. And so, no, there's absolutely no truth to these medications injuring the vagus nerve. Now, ileus is a different situation, and we see that quite frequently, right? I mean, people get an ileus after this surgery. That's to some degree, the intent of these medications is that they slow down initially gastric emptying, but it's not that selective that it only works on the stomach.
Right.
It works on the small intestine, it works on the colon. That's why we see constipation. So it slows down all of your gastrointestinal motility. But it's really important that this is a side effect of the medication, not a damage that it causes.
Right.
And so when you stop taking the medication, the motility returns back to normal.
Right.
And so there's zero evidence that this causes any permanent gastroparesis, permanent intestinal paralysis. It causes temporary paralysis, temporary ileus while you're taking it. So no, I don't think you should have any risk. My concern is that you're not going to lose much weight because you're using Trulicity instead of one of the better meds.
Right. But she may not have coverage for one of the better medications. So
she may not have coverage. But she's in Michigan. I bet she does. Coverage is so much better in Michigan.
It really is,
in
actually.
Arizona.
It really is.
So much better. They're one of the states where Medicaid covers.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They cover Wegovy.
Yep. All right. So what's our next question? Joel, what do you got?
The next question comes from YouTube, from Lily. I had a sleeve last year and I am 1 year and 1 month post-op. I only lost 45 pounds from 270 pounds to 225. I wish to be 185. I started Ozempic at 220 pounds. I am thinking of getting the bypass or duodenal switch, and I am not sure if it's a good idea.
All right. So no response to Ozempic. What do you think, Deidre?
Well, there could be a few things going on there. One, she could just be not a great responder. She wasn't a good responder to bariatric surgery either, and they do work on the same pathway, in a sense.
Yeah.
Two, she might want to look at nutrition. Is she eating the right things? Is she being active? Three, Ozempic is very dose dependent. You know, where does she need to be at a higher dose? Does she need to be?
That's
has
my
she
suspicion
reached
here.
the max dose?
Yeah.
You know, so there are some things we could definitely investigate. Also, what other medications is she on? Is she on other medications that could be affecting her weight?
Here's what I see a lot. I'm sure you see this too. Oh, I took Ozempic and it didn't work. Well, talk to me. Let's walk through. What did you take? Oh,
Right.
I did the starter dose. How much was the starter dose? 0.25.
Right. Well, it's not
And
magic.
how long did you take it? I took it for 4 weeks.
Right.
And how much weight did you lose? I didn't lose any weight. That's not shocking, especially in diabetics. Diabetics never
they
lose weight on
more
the
slowly.
0.25.
Well, any of the big comorbidities, diabetes, hypertension,
Yeah.
they're all going to lose weight more slowly.
So the question I have is, what dose did you try? Did you get all the way to the 2 milligram dose of Ozempic? Wegovy's 2.4. The highest dose of Ozempic is 2, pretty close. And so until someone has kind of hit that max dose, I'd say if you're not losing weight on one, you're probably not going to lose weight.
Yeah, you're probably not going to respond to that medication.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're not going to be a good responder to other GLP-1s, though.
Right.
I definitely see people who are good responders to Zepbound, which is Mounjaro, that were not good responders on Wegovy and Ozempic.
Yeah.
So
our take on sleep regain is you really want to explore the meds fully before you move on to
Absolutely.
revision. And so my question, for Lily is, have you fully explored Ozempic? Have you gone up to that highest 2 milligram dose? Do you have coverage for Zepbound or Mounjaro? Can we switch you over to that medication
Right.
and see if you also don't respond to that medication? And at that point, I would then, if we're still not seeing response, because we see about 15% of people not respond to these meds.
yeah, no, it's
Right?
definitely out there.
It's out there.
Yeah.
So if we've really gone through all of the doses and done a very thorough eval, and again, that's where it might be worth talking to an obesity specialist, someone who prescribes these things all
Right.
day long and really has a good understanding.
Knows the dosing,
Yeah.
knows side effects, knows how you should be eating, can review
Right.
your medications, and knows all of the components of
Yeah.
weight loss and these medications to make these medications effective.
Yeah. We see 15% of people really not respond to these meds. We probably see a similar number are the super responders. They
Right.
can pretty much eat cheeseburgers and they still get thin and lose
They
weight.
can be on a
and-
super low dose of
You're right.
medication and lose 105, 50 pounds.
Yeah, we saw the same thing in bariatric surgery.
Yeah.
Right? We see 15% of our patients, just unbelievable response. But the remaining 70% of people are going to fall somewhere in between there.
Right.
And that's where the nutrition comes in, the exercise comes in, the lifestyle, the proper dosing. And in that group of people, there's going to be a right way and a wrong way to do this. And we just see time and time again that this is being done, suboptimally.
Right. Well, people just don't have the experience. A lot of
Yeah.
providers don't prescribe these as their main
As their
job,
main
which is
job,
what we
right,
do, and so
yeah.
they don't have the experience needed to know how to optimize
Right.
the medications
Yeah.
for weight loss.
So I think that would be the thing I'd want to explore with Lily. All right. So what's our final question here, Joel?
The final question came via email from Chris. Can you share your thoughts on the product label statement, discontinue Ozempic in women at least 2 months before a planned pregnancy?
Yeah. So wow, there's a lot here, huh?
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier.
So Deidre, how do you counsel patients of childbearing age with a goal of becoming pregnant who are taking GLP-1s?
Well, I mean, double protection, right? So
Right.
something like an IUD, or if you're on oral birth control, barrier protection as well. And then we counsel them to stop at 2 months before surgery because that's what the package insert says. But I have had a couple patients that did not realize they were pregnant because you don't usually realize you're pregnant for 4 or 8 weeks, and so didn't stop the medications. They haven't been studied, so we don't know if there's going to be any long-term consequences.
There's
of
some
that.
concern. I mean, there's some
Yeah.
data registries out there. So Eli Lilly's putting together a data registry. But there are some concerns about the safety in pregnancy.
Yeah, and I think until we know for sure, definitely we want to avoid that. For sure, you cannot take it after you become pregnant or breastfeeding at all.
I think it's important also to state that it's not that we don't have any evidence of safety. It's that there's a few studies, very small, very nonspecific, and all in diabetics. So all of the data that's out there is only in diabetic patients who have higher risks of birth control, of birth defects and
Right.
pregnancy issues. But there is some evidence that may point to this not being safe in pregnancy. And I think that's a really important. We have to start from that assumption. It's very tempting to say, well, we want it to be safe in pregnancy because it saves us from so many problems.
Right.
But I don't know that we can actually say that, because it's a huge problem if you've lost 60 or 70 pounds on these meds and then you stop taking them and become pregnant. You
Yes.
can gain 40 pounds in that first trimester, which is extremely dangerous for the baby
Right.
and the mother as well. And so that, those rapid shifts in weight that we could see, it's kind of a perfect storm. You stop the GLP-1 and you become pregnant, and we can see massive weight gain in that
Right.
situation. And I that's one question I still don't have an answer to. We have zero guidelines. I think we're going to see more and more people talking about this.
Well, as fertility increases when you lose weight on these medications,
Yeah,
yes.
right? Yeah, exactly. Especially as people start using this as a bridge to fertility, right? I mean, if a fertility medicine increased your risk of becoming pregnant, but also increased your risk of birth defects, that would be a very controversial
Right.
medication.
Yeah.
And so that may be what we have in these meds. We cannot say for certain that we don't have that. And so I think for those of you who are considering pregnancy and considering using these meds with fertility, I would tread very carefully through this territory.
Right.
I would make sure you're
Be
working
aware, be
with
safe.
make sure you're working with a very knowledgeable OB and walking through this as you're planning and heading toward pregnancy,
Right.
as opposed to kind of limping into it and becoming pregnant, because we don't know the answer. There is not data that shows that it's dangerous,
Right.
but there is some suspicion that there could be some issues with
Right.
it. And
Interesting.
I don't know that we don't know it for sure.
don't know the answer yet.
And without question, because of that, we must assume that
Right.
it is unsafe. And we have to proceed as if that is the truth until we have more data otherwise. So this is really interesting. We're going to see this. I'm sure we're going to talk about this again.
Probably.
Yeah. It's a very, very challenging subject. And my heart goes out to women of childbearing age kind of using this as for fertility,
Yeah.
because what do you do?
I mean, it's actually very interesting because we've been using bariatric surgery for fertility for a long time, and there's not really much increased risk with
No.
pregnancy with bariatric surgery. So you can lose weight with bariatric surgery, get pregnant without risk, and very little risk to the pregnancy itself. We definitely know how to manage it very effectively. Very little risk to the fetus. But with these GLP-1s, and more people are going to be using these for weight loss instead of surgery, there's this unknown. And for fertility instead of surgery, there's this unknown,
Yeah.
And it just makes it a lot more complicated.
Yep, for sure. All right. We don't have all the answers on the show, huh?
Nope.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. This podcast is produced by Sierra Miller and Rhiannon Griffin, and the editing is done by AutoGrow. I want to give a special thanks to our guest, Lacey. Please check us out on social media or our website. Consider joining our online nutrition program or our Pound a Cure Platinum program for those people seeking really customized personal assistance for management of weight regain after bariatric surgery or GLP-1 use. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.